In 1945, the German forces capitulated, ending the Second World War in Europe, which brought many destruction to the continent. Paired with this was the subsequent division of Europe between Soviet and Allied spheres of influence in Europe. Winston Churchill, the English Prime Minister, was skeptical about the Soviet rise and planned an attack. This presumed the start of a possible Third World War between East and West, not much after the Second ended, bringing a new era of destruction to the old continent. In this video, we are going to look over the causes of this secret operation and subsequent military actions in what would become a scenario for the Third World War. The initial primary goal of the operation was declared as to impose upon Russia the will of the United States and the British Empire, even though the will of these two countries may be defined as no more than a square deal for Poland. That does not necessarily limit the military commitment. The Soviet Union is referred to as Russia throughout the document, a metonym that was common in the West throughout the Cold War. The undertaking had the full support of public opinion in the British Empire and the United States, and consequently, the morale of British and American troops continued high. The chiefs of staff were concerned that both the enormous size of the Soviet forces deployed in Europe at the end of the war and the perception that Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin was unreliable caused a Soviet threat to exist in Allied-held Western Europe. The USSR had yet to launch its attack on Japanese forces, and so one of the assumptions in the report was that the Soviets would instead ally with Japan if the Western Allies commenced hostilities. The planners decided that without American help, the British would probably fail. The assessment signed by the Chief of Army Staff on June 9, 1945, concluded, "It would be beyond our power to win a quick but limited success, and we would be committed to a protracted war against heavy odds." The hypothetical date for the start of the Allied invasion of Soviet-held Eastern Europe was scheduled for July 1, 1945, 4 days before the United Kingdom general elections. The plan assumed a surprise attack by as many as 47 British and American divisions in the area of Dresden, in the middle of Soviet lines, that represented almost half of the approximately 100 divisions available to the British, American, and Canadian headquarters at that time. The plan was considered by the British Chiefs of Staff Committee as militarily unfeasible due to an anticipated 2.5 to 1 superiority in divisions of Soviet ground forces within Europe and the Middle East by 1 July, when the conflict was projected to occur. Most of the offensive operation would have been performed by American and British forces, as well as Polish forces, and as many as 10 divisions of the German army, remobilized from prisoner of war status. Any quick success would be caused by surprise alone. If a quick success could not be obtained before the beginning of winter, the assessment was that the Allies would be committed to a protracted total war. In the report of May 22, 1945, an offensive operation was deemed hazardous. Apart from the chances of revolution in the USSR and the political collapse of the present regime, the elimination of Russia could only be achieved as a result of the occupation of such areas of metropolitan Russia that the war-making capacity of the country would have been reduced to a point at which further resistance became impossible. The situation might have developed in such a way that Russians succeeded in withdrawing without suffering a decisive defeat. They would then presumably adopt the tactics which they had employed so successfully against the Germans and in previous wars of making use of the immense distances with which their territory provided them. To achieve the decisive defeat of Russia in a total war would require, in particular, the mobilization of manpower to counteract their present enormous manpower resources. The projected Allied army was composed of 80 infantry divisions, 23 armored divisions, 6,048 tactical aircrafts, and 2,750 strategic aircraft. Meanwhile, the Soviet army was made of 228 infantry divisions, 36 armored divisions, 11,802 tactical aircrafts, and 960 strategic aircraft, having a clear numerical superiority over the Allies. In response to an instruction by Churchill of June 10, 1945, a follow-up report was written on what measures would be required to ensure the security of the British Isles in the event of war with Russia in the near future. American forces were relocating to the Pacific region for a planned invasion of Japan, and Churchill was concerned that the reduction of forces would give the Soviets a strong advantage for offensive action in Western Europe. The report concluded that if the United States engaged solely in the Pacific theater, Britain's odds would become fanciful. The Joint Planning Staff rejected Churchill's notion of retaining bridgeheads on the continent as not having any operational advantage. It was envisaged that Britain would use its air force and navy to resist, but a threat from mass rocket attack was anticipated, with no means of resistance except for strategic bombing. By 1946, tensions were developing between the Allied-occupied and the Soviet-occupied areas of Europe and were considered as resulting potentially in conflict. One such area was the Julian-Marchin area of southeastern Europe that is now divided among Croatia, Slovenia and Italy, and on August 30, 1946, informal discussions occurred between the British and the American Chiefs of Staff concerning how such a conflict could develop and the best strategy for conducting a European war. Again, the issue of retaining a bridgehead on the continent was discussed, with Dwight D. Eisenhower preferring a withdrawal to the Low Countries rather than to Italy because of their proximity to the United Kingdom. Eventually, in June 1945, Churchill's military advisors cautioned him against implementing the plan, but it still remained a blueprint for a Third World War. There were numerous flashpoints around Europe where Allied troops were face-to-face with the Red Army, and any of these confrontations could have sparked another world conflict. The code name was now reused instead for a second plan, which was a defensive scenario by which the British were to defend against a Soviet drive towards the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean after the withdrawal of the American forces from the continent. When the Labour Party acquired power by the 1945 general election, it ignored the draft plan. The study became the first Cold War-era contingency plan for war against the USSR. Both plans were top secret and were not made public until 1998, although Soviet spy guy Burgess had revealed some details to them at the time.